Cone of Glass and Fire. Chapter 14. Tea and Talks. All week, Harry expected to faint or break something valuable, but somehow neither of these things happened. He did feel a headache coming on every now and again, but started to get into the rhythm of having enough fluid and letting it out at the other end. And another thing was strange. After he had got clean at the end of work, he really, truly did feel clean, properly clean, like he never had before. He mentioned this to some of the other men, and they nodded. Like having had a Turkish bath, they said. He had no idea what a Turkish bath was, but whatever it was, he felt like he'd had one every day. Mr. Craven had let Mum know via notes delivered by the girls that he would be free on Saturday and looked forward to their engagement. Very genteel, said Mum. Harry had once wondered how she knew so much about being genteel when she had grown up on a farm, but she had put him out of his misery at least 25 times since, over the years. My mum, she always said, was very genteel, a pretty daughter of a solicitor outside Stourbridge. Well, she and a very handsome and well-to-do farmer, Martin Bartlett, had met, made a love match, and that was that. Her mum had taught the girls about manners, but as time went on, she had been as busy as farmers' wives tend to get, and Jane had helped her in the kitchen and dairy, liking that kind of work. Jane tended to be more country than Mum. There was nothing wrong with Aunt Jane's manners, not at all, he mused, though she'd tend not to point it out, unlike his Mum. In fact, when he thought about it, Mum and Dad themselves seemed to have been a love match, though those times were not spoken of much, so maybe it ran in the family. Come Saturday, the place was polished and scrubbed, linen on the table, and proper china instead of earthenware, the tea set indeed. Charlie was warned 100 times to be as careful as she possibly could. Poppy had walked over earlier in the day and changed into her best clothes, as it was deemed a family social event, and Poppy was still considered as one of their own. Already she looked brown as a berry. Oh well, that's farm life, Mum sighed. And Poppy sighed and smiled a huge smile herself that showed she had taken it as a compliment, although strictly speaking it hadn't been. She looks bonny, Jane said, fussing with Poppy's hair, and it had to be admitted that Poppy did indeed look bonny, whereas she had looked a little pasty before. Abby was warned off any jibes against her cousin, but Poppy now gave the elder one a look of her own which seemed to say, just you give it a go and you'll get something back. A little bit of time with Val and with Willem and John around seemed to have sharpened her up, Harry suspected. Thank heaven. For whatever reason, Abby took care of feeling the difference herself and heeded the warning. Mr. Craven arrived at around 5 minutes to 4. Jane had the kettle just starting to bubble. The tea was already in the pot. She took the kettle off the fire and moved it to its keep hot, but not on the boil place. Abby opened the door and they all rose to greet their guest. Harry nervous and a little awkward. Mum as calm, or if she was tense, it didn't show. Mum's so adept at hiding her feelings, though, Harry reflected. It's hard to know what she's really thinking. She spoke, even and measured, but actually now he could detect a small waver in her tone, though he was sure Mr. Craven would not. "Come in, sir. You're very welcome indeed." "Thank you, Mrs. Gaskell. I'm very pleased to be invited." "Hello, Mr. Craven," Harry managed to get out finally. His more polite, welcoming speech had deserted him. "Would you like to sit down and take some tea?" Mum helped him out. "That would be very nice." He had hold of his well-made and new-looking hat by the rim. "Abby, please take Mr. Craven's hat, would you? There's a dear." Abby had rehearsed this part and acted it to a T. She felt good in her best dress and knew she looked as pretty as a peach, Mum had said. She curtsied slightly, nodding her head briefly, her long, fair, shiny locks bobbing on either side of her face, and with natural grace, put out her slender hand to take the hat. She went over to the pegs by the door and assigned it the one that seemed most elevated to her, as if she was a ballerina. The whole room watched, all eyes being drawn towards her. After her solo performance, the normal nature of everyone else became apparent as they all shuffled clumsily by comparison to chairs or the bench. Thank goodness everyone was seated now, and the tea could begin. This relieved some of the awkwardness felt till that time. Jane and Mum had that day made a delicious selection of cakes to accompany the thin, fashionable delicacy of cucumber sandwiches, which Harry could not understand anybody in the whole world liking. There was nothing to them. Give him a big farmer's slice of ham and pickle any day. But he could not complain about the cakes, dainty though some were, and the large fruit and cherry cake with icing on the top. As far as he was concerned, cake didn't get any better. He knew they had gone all out to make their exalted guest welcome. All week they'd been eating plain potatoes cooked in the oven to save money for the cost of the tea, and he knew they were very lucky to have a cook as good as Aunt Jane, and one who could make a little go a very long way. She had to, but here she had excelled herself, although Harry himself had been warned not to eat too much. It wasn't polite, and also there had to be enough for our guest, not you. You can have some bread and jam if you want, laughter, if you're still empty, Jane had told him. Oh well. Charlie was almost too scared to pick up her cup and saucer, poor thing. But Mum was terrified of any of them chipping or cracking a piece of her cherished tea set, the one that her family had given her on her wedding, her own mother's choice. Mr. Craven praised the cakes most highly. He said he hadn't seen a better tea since Christmas itself. Jane even simpered a little, quite extraordinarily. They relaxed, talking about what everyone had been doing at school. "They're all bright girls," Mr. Craven told Mum, who already knew this really, but it was very nice to hear it from their teacher himself. He urged Poppy to continue trying hard at the village school she now went to. She said she would, and even Jane was nearly convinced. Then it was on to the matter in hand. The girls were allowed to play quietly if they wished, or read, although the number of books was severely limited for anyone in the household. It was just a genteel thing to say. Abby chose to stay and look beautiful, knowing that she could. She was merely 1 year younger than Harry, and looking forward to the time when she would be at work herself, and soon she would be wearing proper dresses. She couldn't wait. Poppy, mostly at work already, although younger, and settled, took Harry away upstairs so that the youngster would not break anything. Mr. Craven was a young man himself, not more than 7 or 26, well educated, having attended the Bluecoats, and then gone by scholarship to university. He came from a religious branch of a glass family, who'd hoped for him to take orders and become a member of the clergy, but his parents had passed on, and Mr. Craven had taken a job in the school, supported by the capital of a benevolent philanthropist from the iron industry. Salary not high overall, but Mr. Craven thought his work most essential. He said it was his mission to aid members of the community as well as school teaching. He was now also conducting lessons via local trade unions for men, and he taught a variety of subjects. He was a very well-respected member of the community. His suit was a well-brushed worsted, though not new, and his polished shoes shone like black mirrors. If you're doing something, always do it to the best of your ability, he always said, and it seemed he followed his own advice when it came to the polishing of shoes, Harry realised looking at them. His tall but spare figure gave the impression that his arms and legs weren't quite sure where to go, yet putting the rest of them at ease, while his face, although it could not be described as handsome, was pleasant-looking in a sympathetic, compassionate way. His manner radiated through him, meaning there was nothing ugly there. Next to the graceful Abby, who sat by him, plying him with tea and cake at intervals, he looked like a long, happy puppet on strings, who brought a smile to all faces on his appearance. "I know that your resources at home are stretched," he said with subtlety to the man of the house, "but I also know that you really should continue your education if at all possible." "I'm not sure how that will be. Well, at the moment I am not earning a sufficient amount, and I have been hoping that the constant burden on Mum and Aunt Jane would get less by my working. I do have good prospects if I work hard and learn my trade, but not for several years, as you must know." "Yes, I think I understand your situation, but surely I can help you in a private arrangement. I believe in honesty, as you must remember from my teaching. I myself have no time to cook with all my teaching work, and Thomas and I can afford no servant. It pains me to admit that my brother and I live on shop pies and bread and cheese. Hardly a good diet for any man. I'm sure Jane would agree." She was nodding. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but no wonder you both look as you do." "I don't mind you saying at all," he laughed. "I wondered whether, given an amount for provisions, whether Perhaps you could make an additional amount which would serve as payment. We would certainly help with money for extra food, but to have it turned into nourishing home-cooked meals is beyond our skill and the span of the day." Jane and Sal looked at each other completely flabbergasted. It was a solution that had never come to mind, despite the fact that barter was common in the community. "Well, we could afford some extra without your help now Harry is working full-time," Jane said proudly. "I can take in some more washing. I'm always getting more people asking me." "No, don't do that, Jane, please," Harry firmly said, his eyes fixed, steady, decided, not the Harry who'd played at school for sure. The teacher continued, "It would be an investment. Your whole family would benefit if Harry was able to better himself." "Oh, I would dearly like to carry on. My maths particularly. I remember you saying, would it be good enough? Would it be enough? It sounds like we would be getting the best of it, I think. I'm not sure. We have our pride, you know, sir. It still feels a little like charity to me. I am from a glass family. You know that. My father was able to better himself and work as a draftsman. I'm not saying that will be your path, Harry. Only you will know what that is, and maybe not yet for some time, but my father received help. Sometimes the Lord shows us a way, and in our hearts we know it is right." They gave him no answer, deciding to sleep on it, and he understood, going away, thanking them for the delicious tea. When he had gone, Mum, Harry and Aunt Jane talked it over. Aunt Jane was of the opinion that it would be hardly any extra work for her, and of the kind that she loved the best, her cooking. Mum agreed and said the matter in that case should depend on the buying of the food. If it was a lot of teaching, then surely they would have to buy the extra food, and it would be tight, very tight for money. No matter what, Mum did not want to accept anything that felt like charity. She had her pride. But if they were able to do their bit towards it, things would be different. Harry nearly agreed, and was so tempted by the thought of learning to speak well and do mathematics that engineers and architects could do. He thought he would need many different skills to raise himself up, but he didn't even know really what they would be. All of a sudden, he began to see working in the cone as just a step, and what was after he couldn't say. Perhaps he could get taught later on, when he could pay for it. Then he wouldn't have to accept any kind of charity whatsoever. He could not make up his mind. The next day, he saw Bill coming out of church in front of them. He hurried to catch him up. "Bill, I need advice, and I've got no man in the house to ask about it." "What's up, lad?" he explained. They had walked away slightly into St. Mary's pretty churchyards, Bill holding his hat, so smart, and in a new black suit with white collar and tie. He looked so different from in the cone. Bill thought for a moment. I've no sons left, Harry. No one to have the pleasure of helping in my house anymore. And no one has asked me before for advice like this. If it worries you, you could help towards it, and then later on, if you wanted, although you wouldn't have to, you could pay me back. I could help. How about that? Does that suit? Would you really do that? Oh, aye, with pleasure, lad. In fact, it feels right to me, somehow. His heart was saying yes. Bill nodded at him. Let me talk to Mr. Craven about it. I know him well. I'm president of the Glassmakers' Friendly Society. We'll work it out. Don't you worry. And later, when you're a professional, you can pay it back somehow if you really want to. Mr. Craven was of the opinion it was a good idea, if it was the only way the Gaskells would accept help. Jane would cook for them, and he was really looking forward to that. But Harry needed more education. That would help him find his path. They accepted the offer, and Harry, after a few weeks longer to get more used to his work, would start his lessons.